By the end of this video, you will be able to consider why instructors need to minimize extraneous processing, manage essential processing, and foster generative processing. For this video, we're jumping right into the cognitive theory for multimedia learning. For multimedia resources, we use two senses to learn, our ears and our eyes. This is called dual channels. People have separate channels for processing verbal or auditory materials and visual materials. We take the visual and oral materials presented to us and store it in working memory, where we organize the information, such as words, images, sounds, etc., and determine what is already known and what is new. Through this process, if we are able to connect the new information to prior knowledge, then it moves into long-term memory. So let's break this down a bit further. Within each of our sensory channels, visual and oral, we can only process a few pieces of information in each channel at one time. This is called limited capacity, where we have limited space on what we take in. Consider when someone provides you with a verbal list of directions that include a lot of information. Are you able to take it all in, or do you need a visual representation to know what you're supposed to do? Another example is when you're presented with a lot of visual information, such as a PowerPoint slide full of small font words or fast-moving pictures or visuals. Do you feel overloaded or overwhelmed? Our visual and auditory senses do not work independently. Depending on the visual information, the auditory information could overload our processing space and vice versa. An example of this is when you're trying to find an address while driving and you turned on the radio to see better. The integration of new information to prior knowledge is called active processing, where we attend to the relevant material, organize that material, and connect it to what we already know. Since people have limited capacity, we can create instruction to support active processing, considering the three demands on cognitive processing capacity: extraneous processing, essential processing, and generative processing. Extraneous processing is cognitive processing that does not support the instructional objective and is created by poor instructional layout. The goal is to limit extraneous processing through reduced unneeded material in the lesson and create simple designs or layout. When designing multimedia, you should ask, is this information necessary? Does the learner need to know this? And does this visual take away from the content? Essential processing is cognitive processing focused on mentally representing the core material based on the complexity of the material. The goal is to manage essential processing through selecting relevant material and to ensure the information is cognitively and developmentally appropriate. When designing multimedia, you should ask, should this information be presented in smaller chunks? Or, do my students need vocabulary or knowledge before we learn this content? Generative processing is cognitive processing focused on deeper understanding of the content through learner motivation and instructional methods that promote engagement. The goal is to foster generative processing through using understandable vocabulary, providing relevant visuals, and including practice activities. When designing multimedia, you should ask, do the visuals support the content? Is the information presented in a way that they can understand? Is the presentation of the information interesting to support the motivation to watch it? For these three cognitive processing goals, minimizing extraneous processing, managing essential processing, and fostering generative processing, there are specific techniques that can be used in the design of multimedia products to support learning. We will explore those in our next video focused on the specific design principles to support the cognitive theory of multimedia learning.